Hey, welcome back. Remember to drop a like to feed this fluffy like eating chinchilla. r/ask Reddit. What is an unexplainable memory from your childhood? My mother walked into my room, waking me up to tell me that most of the world's population was dead. I spent the rest of the day as normal, eating breakfast, going shopping with her, going to a playground, then eating dinner, albeit acting quite nervous throughout. The next day, she tried to make it clear that what started the previous morning wasn't true. I asked her if she remembered, but she told me she didn't. I'm certain it wasn't a dream, because I recalled the rest of what happened the previous day to her, only to be met by her confirmation that everything I remembered was correct, right down to how shaky I was and how upset I seemed. All except for the part that humanity was on the brink of extinction. When I was a kid, I had a classmate over who claimed he was a vampire. I didn't believe him. I told him if his eyes glow in the dark, that would prove he was a vampire. We went into the bathroom and I turned off the light. His eyes were glowing. It scared the crap out of me. I opened the door, ran outside, jumped on my bike and got as far away from my house as I thought I could. When I eventually came back home, the classmate was gone and my dad was pissed that I abandoned my friend. The stuff eye doctors use for certain tests glows in the dark. I, an eye doctor's son, used to play this very prank on people. I saw the original Jurassic Park when it was in theaters in the summer of 1993. I was 7 years old. During the scene at the end where the velociraptors are about to get Alan Grant and company, I very clearly remember the T-Rex suddenly bursting through the wall of the visitor's center before it grabs the first raptor in its jaws. The wall was made out of a grayish-white material, concrete or plaster. Back in those years you had to wait a long time for movies to come out on VHS, but when it finally did and my parents brought it home, I couldn't wait to watch it. I remember being confused at the end, because I was waiting in that tense raptor scene for the T-Rex to come bursting through the wall, but instead it was just suddenly there, grabbing the raptor, as we can all see in the film. I thought that it didn't seem to make much sense now, because how did the T-Rex get in the building all of a sudden seemingly without anyone noticing? I suppose I put it out of my mind, and always just figured that it was either my imagination or that the scene of the T-Rex crashing through the wall appeared only in the theatrical version and was removed for the home video. But then recently I decided to Google about that scene and was shocked to discover, at last, that there were others that remembered this scene as well. Rumors persist that the theatrical version of Jurassic Park included a scene towards the end of the film where the Tyrannosaurus actually smashes through a plaster wall in the visitor center. This scene was not included in the DVD or VHS release of the film, and no evidence other than first-person accounts has been found for this scene's existence. Steve Spars-Williams in his Vimeo channel said no such scene ever existed. Spars cannot be said of towing the official line as he is no longer with them, or even in mainstream Hollywood for the matter of fact. So, it may be assumed that he is telling the truth. Here is the link to his comment. In other words, Steve Williams, who built the T-Rex used in Jurassic Park and worked on the other dinosaur effects, has stated that there is no such scene. Here's his response in the comment section of the above Vimeo link when asked if there was a scene where the T-Rex broke into the visitor's center at the end. We never did a shot where we saw the Rex enter the rotunda area. It was Spielberg who actually added that sequence cause he was so happy with how all the other shots were proceeding. Steve Price, who dies during Jumanji, animated that final shot. TLDR, when I saw Jurassic Park in the cinema, I remember the T-Rex burst through the wall at the end to get the raptors. Others remember this scene too. No such scene exists on home video versions, and in fact appears never to have existed at all. I could lucid dream when I was a kid. I would actually get really excited to go to bed because I could decide what to dream and then dream it. I had a recurring character in my lucid dreaming. He was a boy my age with blonde hair. We would always play in this backyard/playground type setting that has a big brick wall on the edge. One night I dreamt that we really wanted to find out what was on the other side of that wall, so we climbed a tree and the boy climbed onto the wall, looked back at me and waved, and went over it. I never lucid dreamed again after that. It actually caused me a lot of distress as a kid. I legit missed him terribly and tried so hard to lucid dream, but just couldn't do it anymore after that. I had a dream that I met a girl around my age when I was a kid. We shared a whole summer together, playing games and all that. I faintly remember her smiling with the sun behind her before the dream ended. I woke up crying and feeling like I just lost someone important. A small upstairs apartment. The only separating the kitchen from the living room was a countertop. My dad was in a chair in the corner facing toward the kitchen, holding me. There was a couch in the middle of the room with 2 adults sitting there while my brother ran circles around. My mom was in the kitchen making a pizza talking to the other adults. It's more a recurring dream I had for many, many years than a memory. I finally asked my mom about it and she confirmed it happened, but I said I was only around 6 months old so I shouldn't remember it. However, my biological dad passed when I was 8, so I just kind of always took it as a memory he wanted me to keep. I have a memory from when I was a baby. I have a scar on the back of my right hand, and I always knew it was because I pulled down a hot curling iron by tugging on the power cord when I was a baby. I obviously had no memory of it though. At some point in high school, I developed this memory of entering a room, seeing my mom looking at herself in a mirror, watching her place something on a table beside her, and then heading straight for that thing she had just put down. I assumed it was a dream or a false memory because I was so young when it happened, like only around a year old, maybe a few months older. But then I described the dream to my mom. I could tell her the layout of the room, where the bed was, where the mirror was, and exactly where it happened. She confirmed all the details. I feel like the memory resurfaced not long after a trip to Mexico where I was visiting the same house in which the accident happened. During this visit, my uncle was living in the room where it happened, so I never got to see inside. However, I knew it was that room for some reason. Visiting the house must have shook that memory loose. When I was 6, I had a girlfriend named Molly. I moved away the next year and never saw her again. For the next 40 years, one of my earliest and most vivid memories was me watching a 6-year-old redhead girl running away from me, up towards her house, yelling, "Mommy, Mommy, Jonathan kissed me." And her mother's voice coming back, "Well, that must mean he really likes you." A few years ago, I'd had a little sangria and decided to see if Molly was on Facebook. I know. There she was. Right name, right age, right hometown, lovely red hair. I PM'd her asking if she was the right red-headed girl. She wrote back that she was definitely the right Molly and was happy to hear from me, but she'd only started dyeing her hair red after college. Memories a trip, man. Edit. Oh, my top post ever is about something sweet and wholesome. Maybe we can have nice things after all. My sister and I apparently both had the same dream one night, a scary one. We were staying in this villa where we had to share a room and we both woke up suddenly. The window was open when it hadn't been before. I realized she was awake as well and told her I'd had a bad dream, and as I started to describe it, she started talking along with me, describing the same dream. In it, this black creature that looked like a bull, only it had shiny, scaly, plastic-looking skin, was standing in the open window with this weird mechanical device, and it somehow fired a projectile at the lamp in the room, which started rocking back and forth. Neither of us wanted to get up and close the window in case the thing was actually out there, so we called for our mom and she closed it, reassured us in typical mom fashion, etc. For months we would talk about that incident and we could never figure out how we both managed to have the same exact dream at the same time. My family and I were driving out of Bellows, a campsite/beach for military families in Hawaii. I lazily gaze out the window and something catches my eye. About 30 feet away in a clearing before a metal gate leading into the forest was a massive bird. Like 8 feet tall massive. It had a long neck, brown feathers, and very thick long legs. My jaw dropped and I was still processing what I had seen when my dad said, "What the hell was that?" Turns out he had seen it too, and we both described it identically. No one else saw it, and by the time our brains had caught up with our eyes it was too late to turn around. I will always regret not turning around. When we returned later in the day there was nothing there. When we asked the guard about it he laughed at us. I scoured the internet afterward, and it looked like nothing I could find. At least, nothing that isn't extinct. It looked amazingly similar to one of the larger species of moa. But those lived in New Zealand thousands of miles away and died out hundreds of years ago. This happened back in 2009, and to this day I wonder whether I saw Lazarus species. Yo, this jarred some childhood memories. I lived on farmland in the country. We didn't farm. My family owned and leased the land, and so I was pretty familiar with the local wildlife. I'd seen plenty of eagles and owls in the past so I could recognize them from a distance. Well, one day as I'm riding home in the car, my dad points at one of the power lines along the road, and perched on top I see something huge. This thing looked taller than me, Too solid of a profile to be a crane, too big to be an eagle or turkey vulture. It was still half a mile away or so I couldn't make out any fine details or colors, and before we got close enough to see it well, it swooped down off the pole and flew away. Never saw anything like it again. Fucker looked bigger than our car. My dad is convinced to this day we saw a pterodactyl. Grandma thinks it was a thunderbird. I remember being at a playground with my family and seeing lightning strike right in front of me. Didn't hear any thunder, no one else saw it, but I remember seeing it pretty vividly. Not sure if there's something that can go on in your brain that would cause something like that to happen, but I remember pleading with my mom to believe that I had just seen a lightning bolt strike right in front of me, and she just ignored me. The whole neighborhood thought I was kidnapped. I don't really know why and what the actual fuck is the thought process of how they think that happened, but apparently the people are frantically searching me. What I remembered is that my elder cousin and her husband took me to an internet cafe to let me watch them pick their wedding outfits. When we returned, everyone was shocked. My brother smiles because he knew I was in trouble, my mom was crying, and my dad slapped the shit out of me. It was so surreal. Oh, I've a good one. So I would have been 2 or 3 years old. Me and my older brother and sister were playing in our front room. My brother is 2 years older than me and my sister is 4 years older than me. I remember being able to see straight out the window unobstructed, so there were no blinds or nets, etc. Suddenly a white transit van pulls up outside and 3 men in black gloves get out, and next thing I know they are in the house. I don't know if the door was broken down or already open or someone opened it. My memory of this is mostly images due to my age, and I didn't see the door, if that makes sense. Anyway, they start beating up my mom and stepdad. My mom is held up against the wall in the kitchen with a knife. My stepdad is on the floor being beaten and kicked, etc. by the other 2 men. It's chaos. My big sister somehow has the sense to get us all out. She helped me and my brother climb out the front window and race next door to get help. Next thing I know, the men run out past us, we're in the front garden, and into the van and drive off. I remember all 3 of us screaming, assuming Mom was dead given we saw a knife to her. She wasn't though. She was beaten but not stabbed. Stepdad badly beaten but again conscious and okay. Police were never involved. That night we packed up everything we could, and in the night we left that house and moved an hour away. Spent time living with acquaintances and in women's refuges, etc. was a long time after before we had a new home. My mom is unreliable at best with details of our childhood. I'm estranged, we don't talk at all. I remember asking her once what it was about, and she claimed it had to do with her hearing too much about a chalky white murder while she worked in a pub. I don't really believe that. I know my stepdad was in and out of prison, so it's more likely he got involved and screwed over the wrong people. But that whole thing is genuinely my earliest memory. Thanks for watching. Remember, every like puts Mario Chinchilla closer to finding his gold coins.